So this video is for anybody who has wanted to make changes in their life, but maybe feels this really intense fear about actually making the change, right? You feel a little bit stuck. And I've been there. And in fact, I'm going to share a story today within the last couple weeks that happened to me that I realized that I was kind of stuck in this cycle of fear. And I had to muster up some courage to enact change in my life. And change is about sort of getting out of our comfort zone. And courage is our kind of golden ticket to get us out of these patterns and these maybe limiting beliefs that we find ourselves stuck in. So I want to talk about that today. So if you've joined me in the past, welcome back. And if this is your first time joining me, thanks for being here. And my name's Cassie Mendez. I'm a shamanic healer and the owner of The Spirit Within. And I created this channel just to help people navigate their healing path, and just for you to know that you're not alone in whatever challenges you're working through in your life. And I really believe that we all have the power to make changes in our life, make positive changes in our life. And any way that I can help do that's what I would like to do for people. So if that resonates with you, feel free to subscribe and let's walk this path together, right? If you want to learn more about my services, or I also have a blog or a newsletter, monthly newsletter, and some other resources to help you on your healing path, then you can check out my website, thespiritwithin.com, and I'll put the link in the description below. So one of the biggest things for me on my own healing path to sort of navigate through has been fear. And creating change in my life always, without fail usually, involves overcoming some fear of some kind. And perhaps that's similar for most people on their path, right? We have something that we want to do and we feel scared to do it. So either we close ourselves off, right, and we stay in our little bubble, our safe, protected bubble, or we put ourselves out there and we try new things, or we surmount this obstacle or challenge that's before us. So one thing that came across my own path this past week and a half, was I had an opportunity come up, and opportunities in our life can be very subtle sometimes. And I know I've had this opportunity arise at different occasions in my life, and I've pushed them away. Like, no, not right now. No, thank you. And that's okay too, right? When the time comes that we see something a little bit differently, then that's the proper moment that we're ready to receive the change. We're ready to move through the change, right? So there's no shame or judgment against ourselves. And what happened was somebody in the neighborhood here where I live posted that their tailor had retired and they were looking for someone to just do simple things like hemming pants and shortening sleeves and stuff like that. Nothing major. Now, my background with sewing's been a big part of my own life. And over the years, one of my passions has been creating historical reproduction garments, which I'm wearing one of them today, and I'll talk a little bit more about that after this story. But the point is that I'm a pretty good seamstress. I have some skills that I've developed over the years, and hemming a pair of pants really, in the grand scheme of all the sewing that I've done, is fairly simple. However, one of the things that I have convinced myself of is that I couldn't possibly sew for other people, because I would mess it up, or I wouldn't do it right, or all these things, these criticisms that go through my mind every time I have an opportunity such as this come up in my life. So I've never acted on it, right? And something felt different the day that I read this. And it's whenever our inner wisdom shines through, it's almost like this, for me, it's almost like I get this little the little elf on your shoulder, or a little, somebody sitting on your shoulder whispering in your ear, like, come on, maybe you should think about it this way. And that's kind of what happened to me. So this sort of welling up of inner wisdom came through, and it said, well, if you continue to do the same actions, you're going to have the same outcome, right? So what does this mean? This means that if we continue to do the same tasks, right, the same day-to-day actions, where we're maybe putting off those things that scare us, or pushing away those dreams that we have that we want to accomplish, then we're going to keep having the same outcome in our life, right? We're going to have the same energy coming back at us. What we put out comes back to us. And so I felt like in that moment, even though I don't want to be a professional seamstress, right? I'm a shamanic healer. That's what I want to do. That's how I want to serve. But this, everything in life, it's not just our work that's important to realizing who we are, truly as a person. Everything in our life is shifting us towards that recognition and that connection to our true self, right? And so this opportunity that came into my life through this potential sewing job, I guess you could call it, was an opportunity for me to overcome this fear and begin to release this limiting belief. Because even though it's about sewing at face value, maybe, there's a deeper belief that I was holding on to about myself and about my ability and my self-esteem that was calling me to begin to take steps to work through that. So I heard that voice in my head, and I just knew instinctively that this was almost like a crossroads moment, right? Where I could make the decision to stay in the path of fear, right? To stay resisting change or resisting letting go of this belief, right? That's always a choice that we have available to us. Or I could take an action right now and I could veer off my path, therefore shifting the energy, right? So what I ended up doing was responding to this person. And I said, I'm a home seamstress. I don't do this professionally, but if you're seeking a sewing service, I'd be happy to do this for you at a fair price. Feel free to send me a message if you would like to hire me, essentially. And let me tell you, when I sent that message, I was so scared when I did it. I could feel all of like these terrifying feelings coming up, and I just had to sit in that. I had to allow that, right? And just allow them to bubble up to the surface. It's like this, when we acknowledge the fear inside of us and we let it come through and we do the thing anyway, right? We're moving forward. I always say we're moving forward with fear, okay? We don't wait for the fear to go away and then do the thing. We always move forward together. And that helps to sort of shift the energy in a different direction, right? We begin to tell our body and our, sort of non-self, I guess you could call it, that this isn't the energy we want to hold on to anymore. This is the way we're going to go. And we can feel a little frazzled when we begin to do that. I know I did. I could feel just the sort of tension coming up, but it has to come up and out. And so if we just sit through that and just breathe through that, we can make it through that moment. And so it began to subside. And sure enough, a little bit later, I get a message from this person, and they said, I would love to hire you for this work. For, it was just hemming some pants. That's all it was. And I did it. I did the task. I hemmed the pants, and it was successful. They fit fine. The person was happy, and they said, I would love to use you again in the future for sewing endeavors. And it was great. I just felt, it wasn't even about the getting the job, so to speak. It was about facing my fear and overcoming this judgment and this belief that I was holding on to about myself. And it felt really good. And then I realized that there's other areas in my life that I'm holding myself back. So that brings me to talking about my outfit today. So, as I mentioned before, one of my really great loves and personal hobbies is I just love the aesthetics of historical garments. I love how they feel, I love how they look, I love the process of designing and creating them. One of my dreams when I started my YouTube channel, this one, Wisdom by Candlelight, was that I wanted to incorporate them in my videos. I had this vision of, and I feel a little teary talking about this because, my channel's been, let's see, I started it last year at some point, right? And it's like I had this dream and I put my dream on the shelf because I was too scared to put myself out there. I was too scared to wear these dresses in front of everybody on the internet and all these other ways that I limited myself and I stifled my own creativity for the sake of being safe, right? And I just decided that, you know what? This is something that I also want to do, and that's what work should be about. That's what our life should be about, is bringing all of our passions together and just living a life of joy. Now, the last thing I want to say about change in our lives and courage and all that, overcoming these things, is we don't wait for the fear to go away before we move forward, right? That's really important to understand. On my own path, it took me a really long time to finally realize that. I was always waiting for the panic to settle before I would do anything. But that's just not how it goes, right? The fear can be there. We can walk with it. We can move forward with it, as a partner. And over time, it lessens. It diminishes. We don't have as strong as a visceral reaction as we do. Now when I do things that are scary, I still feel scared, right? I still feel it right here, but I do it and my body relaxes a lot sooner, right? The tension eases. I don't have these days of stress on the body that I used to. So our healing is only gonna create greater change in our life, greater positive change in our life as we walk a healing path and face our fears with courage, right? Courage and bravery. Healing is about coming into alignment with who we truly are. My business is called The Spirit Within because we all have this unique sort of light that we're here to share with others. And as we heal, we uncover that and shine it out in the world. So, I encourage you to take a moment to see, where are you holding yourself back? So in my next video, I'm going to talk a little bit more, now that we have an awareness of a change that we want to make in our life, what are our next steps, right? So I want to talk a little bit more about next steps, and I'm going to do that in my next video. So if that's something that you would like to hear more about, then feel free to subscribe to my channel. So as I close out our time together today, I want to share a little bit with about the flowers that I have here with me. So this is the lilac flower, and one of my other passions, I guess you could say, is I love plant spirit medicine and tuning into the energy of just the nature around us, especially flowers. I really have a very strong connection with different flowers. And this one in particular is one of my favorites. So I live down south now, but my friend up north brought me down a northern lilac. And they don't tend to grow very well down here, but this one in particular, I put it in the ground and sort of hoped for the best, right? And about 3 years after I planted it, it started to provide flowers. And ever since then, every year in about March or April, it blooms these beautiful purple, fragrant flowers. And I don't know if you've ever smelt lilacs before. They have a very distinct smell, in my opinion. And they're always, to me, like the first sign of spring. And, I wanted to tune into the message that it had to share for us today. as a sort of partner in this video. And I want to read that to you. So the message that Lilac has to share with us today, it talks about latent potential and seizing the moment, right? So that we can bloom and create beauty in our lives. You know, the thing about lilac is it only blooms once a year. And you know, what I get from this flower, what's coming through for us, is that we all have this sort of latent potential within us, right? We have this endless source of energy and creativity and beauty, so that when the time is right for us, when we are ready to sort of seize the moment and create change in our lives, when we well up enough courage to create that change in our lives, then we have everything we need to make that happen. We don't need an outside source. We don't need, you know, this thing in our lives first before we do that. There is always that potential within us to begin to create that change in our lives and to bloom to our fullest potential. You know, I love the flowers of the lilac, but one of the other things that I really love is the leaves. And if you feel the leaves, they're actually quite soft, almost like a soft fabric. You know, some plants have they have like a very prickly nature to them, but the leaves of the lilac are so soft and just very gentle, you know. And what this is sharing with me is that when we're creating change in our lives, it's not about, you know, coming in and like wielding this heavy sword and slashing through you know, these triggers or these things in our lives that we want to just get rid of. You know, I get this image of like somebody like whacking away at the vines with abandon, like, oh, I'm just going to get rid of this and I'm going to push through this. It's not about that, right? When we're nurturing change in our lives, that's the term that comes through, is nurturing change, right? We want to be soft and loving and gentle with ourselves. We don't need to go in and start bashing ourselves and putting ourselves down for being a certain way, right? We want to do it with love and compassion and understanding, because we can't know that something is maybe not a right fit for us until we actually know that, right? We have to be ready to embody this change in our life. If we don't cultivate that first, then perhaps the change won't be lasting or stay, right? And only we know when we're ready to make that change, right? We actually take the steps to do it. Like I mentioned before, I had other opportunities over my life to be able to make the change and make a different decision in my life, but I didn't do it because it wasn't the right time for me to do that. So we create these changes when we're ready, and with softness, right? With compassion and understanding. And we begin to love ourselves no matter whether we're, you know, have realized our dream yet or not. We still love ourselves through it. And the softness also comes through doing this via small steps, right? We don't need to take these giant leaps. We can take small steps to create that change in our lives, right? And maybe it could be just, you know, let's say that you want to, you know, maybe it's just drafting the email that you're wanting to send, but not sending it quite yet. You know, you're just gonna do that to start. And then down the road, you actually send the email. For example, this is just an example, right? If you want to learn a new technique, maybe you start by just seeing where, maybe you've always wanted to take dance lessons, and you start by just looking around to see where the dance studios are that you can potentially learn this, right? And you price it out and you see what studio might be a good fit for you. You know, it's about those small steps can start opening up opportunity in our lives, because we are shifting the pattern and we're not doing it in a very harsh, in a very harsh or heavy way, right? If we do these small steps, if you're driving the car slowly, you're less likely to miss the street signs when you're passing them. So it's okay to take baby steps. Like maybe if we're wanting to take a dance class, for example, maybe we want to learn how to dance, we can just start by looking to see what dance studios are around our area, right? That's a small step that we can take. Whereas before, maybe you were not even looking up, you weren't putting any energy into finding a dance studio. So that's a baby step we can take. And these baby steps create big changes in our life over time, right? Just like the little flowers here. The funny thing about the lilac is like they're all these tiny little flowers, but when you look at lilac from a distance, these tiny little flowers create this like beautiful, almost like a large bloom, right? And so lilac helps to support us to do that. The last point here that came through was about loving every part of ourselves, right? This is part of our healing journey and our path here with overcoming these things and utilizing courage on our path to create these changes. When we summon the courage to surmount these things, it's a way of loving ourselves and loving ourselves through these things. And as we begin to do this, we cultivate more love in our own life, right? Towards ourselves. And that is almost like the ultimate sort of underlying factor of all these things, right? When we have a lot of fear and when we have a lot of fear in our lives, often there's this underlying aspect of us that doesn't really love ourselves very much, right? So as we begin to choose ourselves and choose what feels true to us, we're also loving ourselves a little bit more, right? And that's what it's all about. So I just want to thank everybody for being here today. And yeah, like I said, if there's ever any topics that you want me to talk about in the future, feel free to leave a comment. And if you're going through any change right now, I'd love to hear about that as well, so we can support each other on this journey. Now, if you want to know a little bit more about my outfit, what year it is, when I made it, any of those things, I'll put a little bit of information in the description below, so you can feel free to check that out as well. Until we see each other again, take care, guys. Bye.